And now I would like to introduce Amjed.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Hi, everyone. I'm Amjed Ayoub. I'm the certification PM for the team. I started this position like 8 months ago, and I'm really excited for this opportunity with Microsoft. Today, I will present our certification process and showing our different type of connectors and how you can get your connector certified with us. So if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I want to give like just a quick idea what a connector is. So just imagine that it's like a proxy or a wrapper around your API. And that wrapper will allow this API to talk to Microsoft different platforms such like Microsoft Flows, Power Apps, and Logic Apps. And it will allow users for Power Automate to use your connectors pre-built actions and triggers with no code needed at all. And this is what makes connectors so powerful. So next slide. Okay, so just imagine that this thing in the middle, the blue thing, is the connector. Before we have the Azure APM management, and this is a website that will work as to host your API definition. Your API definition will be stored in something called Swagger. So if we go back to the connector here, we see that the smallest circle is open API definition. So that's your Swagger file. We're gonna add to that API definition some metadata like actions and triggers, which will bring that definition or API definition to live. And then maybe some code. It's like not required to add code to your connector. You can definitely publish and certify a codeless connector. But this feature also is still available. You can add some code to your connector. And by the end, when the connector is ready, it will allow the API that is behind this connector to talk to Microsoft different platforms. Next slide. I want to show the different types of connectors. We have three main different types, and I want to start with the last one, which is the custom connector. This is a type of connector that is available for anybody. Anybody can go and build a custom connector. There is no restrictions there, no requirements, nothing. Anyone can go build a connector, custom connector, and of course, it will be available only for you. You can share it with with somebody else, and it will become available for those people that you share it with only. So here, like in public, when under availability, when I say public, I mean public, the people that you share it with only. So it's not going to be available for everybody on Power Platform. Um, if you want to publish this and get it certified, the custom connector, it needs to be one of these categories, either independent publisher and verified publisher. And as you can see, the only difference between those two types is the ownership of the API. So both connectors will be available for public. All users will be all Power Automate users, Flows and Power Apps and Logic Apps. All users can use this connector. But the only difference is the ownership. If you own the API behind this connector, then you are a verified publisher. If you do not own the API, you still can publish a connector as an independent publisher. Next slide, please. Okay, and now after we know like what type of partners we are, we're gonna start registering our connector. The first step would be to register the connector and fill out the Microsoft registration form. And this step is required only from verified publishers or API owners only. And in this form, we just like collecting some general information about partners, for example, about the company, the size of the company, confirmation from them that they do own the API, a privacy policy, what is the purpose of the connector, and does it really offer a good value for the community? Does it bring something new? After that, after we approve the connector, we were gonna start preparing the connector and getting the artifacts ready. And this step here is required from both partners, independent and verified publishers. They both need to meet the requirements for Microsoft. For example, the title of the connector should be less than 30 characters. The description should be between 30 and 500. All operations should have summaries and descriptions. Responses, for example, we do not allow default responses. You should define a proper response with a valid schema definition. The English language for all the files. This is a really good and important step to make sure that there is no grammatical errors or typos in your files, and this will help later on after your connector gets published and certified. It might be eligible for localization later on. We do localize for multiple languages. And just to make that job easier and make it going smooth with no issues, that's why we ask for a good English language from the beginning. So next slide. After that, we're gonna get going into preparing our artifacts and metadata. And for that, there is some important properties that is important to include. For example, the publisher and stack owner. For independent publishers, those two should be different because the publisher does not own the API and stack owner is the owner of the API. In case of verified publisher, they should be the same because who is publishing the connector should be owning the API. And then, for example, some properties like the contact, the website, privacy policy, and what categories the connector is under. And then the artifacts, which will include the API definition for the connector and the API properties. For independent publisher, we ask only for two files, the API definition swagger.json and the API property.json. There is no icon is required for the independent publishers. Microsoft will provide an icon for them. And then for verified publishers or API owners, we're going to ask for the API definition Swagger file, API properties, and they have to provide an icon for their connector as well. And from all partners, we ask for a good, nice, small file called README. And this README file will be will be the documentation for your connector in our open source repo in GitHub. And we recommend using a tool called Bacon tool. And of course, all these I can share after I finish presenting. I will share all links for those tools and all those documents. We have a tool called Bacon tool. You can use it to download your custom connector from Power Automate, and you can use it also to validate your artifacts before submitting to our certification process. So you make sure that your files are ready and valid for certification. So it's very recommended, highly recommended to validate your artifacts before submitting them. And then step 5, after we validate and we got all our files ready, we are ready to submit. The first submission we ask is to submit in our open source repo on GitHub. For independent publishers, there one more step here that we ask them to add some screenshots for their connectors as they are confirming that they test their connector and the connector is working as expected. And this is the icon that they will, Microsoft will give for all independent publishers. And for both partners, they have to submit all artifacts in GitHub. We run some checks, for example, the security check and the Swagger and change validation check. Those are checks that will run. They are almost the same checks that runs in the Bacon tool. So if you ran the Bacon.validate and there was no errors there, then those issues should be passing with no issues as well. The last one would be the CLA, our CLA agreement. And it's required for all partners to sign this agreement in GitHub. Usually it takes 2 weeks for Microsoft to review your PR, but now we were taking within 1 week to review the PR and move forward. After the PR is merged and approved, we will ask verified publishers only to take the same artifacts that they submitted in GitHub, and they can use their latest commit ID from GitHub to submit to ISV Studio. For independent publishers, this step is not required at all. We do not require any independent publisher to create an account in ISV Studio and submit there. We will create the connector for them in ISV Studio. So for independent publishers, all what they need is to submit in GitHub. So after that, partners, verified publishers will upload to ISV Studio with their artifacts. Our engineers, I'm still in the same slide, sorry, Jocelyn. No, go back. Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. So our engineers will review your submission in ISV Studio, making sure that you submitted the same files in GitHub or used the latest commit ID from GitHub, that you also submitted a good icon that meets our requirements as well. If everything looks good in your submission, we will move forward and we will prepare your connector for testing. In that stage, and that's that step also for both partners, verified and independent. We will deploy the connector to preview region, and we will test all connectors, fields there, all operations and all triggers, making sure that it is working as expected. After the functional verification is done, and if the connector passes our test, we will ask partners to test. And of course, this step now is only for verified publishers, because if you remember, for independent publisher, we already asked them to add some screenshots along with their PR in GitHub to verify that they already did this partner testing. So for independent publisher, it's done. For verified publishers, we will ask them in ISV Studio to go create an environment. And for creating this environment and testing your connector, you will need a valid Power Automate license. Now, next slide. After partner is testing, and if your connector is working as you expect in preview region, you will confirm with our engineers in ISV Studio that you tested and the connector is ready for deployment. And this is the latest step in the certification process. Usually it takes 3 to 4 weeks because we deploy to different regions, and each region take 1 day to deploy. For example, first region would be testing, next region would be USA preview, and then Asia, except of some countries, and so on. So each region will take 1 day, and in total, they will take like 12 to 14 days to complete. And that's for deployment. After, next slide. Just like a quick review over the steps and like see the difference between verified publishers and independent publishers. For registration, this step is only required from verified publishers. Preparing the connector metadata and artifacts are required from both. GitHub is required from both. ISV Studio is required from VPs only. Verified publishers. For independent publishers, Microsoft will create the connector in ISV Studio. For functional verification or Microsoft testing, it's required for both. We test both partners' connectors, and also partner testing is required from both. Deployment also will be done for both connectors. Next slide. And now, this is a very good point, and I think all partners should be aware of this. We allow like updating the connector during the certification process and after it gets deployed, of course. But any update during the certification process will reset the process to the beginning. You will go back to the first step where you need to submit a pull request with your updated artifacts. Next slide, please. And then just like why it's good to certify a connector and not just have it as a custom connector. First of all, it's free and no cost at all to certify your connector. The second thing, you will be belonging to like your connector will be listed in the official list of Microsoft connectors. You can gain visibility for or connector. Your connector will be shown in the different Microsoft platforms. Power Apps, Logic Apps, and Power Automate. Of course, that will expand the reach of your API by the users of Power Automate. You can unlock many marketing benefits. Of course, we have a blog post, monthly blog post that we share our new and updated connectors in, and that blog post also gets listed in social media. And I think the most important thing is the last one, that you can get a feedback and technical feedback from Microsoft with any issue with your connector. You can reach out to our team and we will be more than happy to help. And last thing, just benefits of deployment and what you can see after deployment. You can see your connector usage and key insights anytime in ISV Studio. You can submit and update your connector anytime after deployment. You can monitor the connector in the community discussion forum and see users' feedback and what they think about your connector. And the last thing, that you can remove the preview tag if your connector is qualified for general availability. And this is a feature we have. All connectors that we deploy, all new connectors will be deployed and certified with a preview tag next to it at the beginning. And it's just for us a way to like know that this is still not eligible for general availability. You can move to general availability if your connector meeting our requirements or required criteria, which is in the next slide. Your connector, for example, should, like the API should be in production, not in testing. The availability of the connector should be 99.95%. The success rate, for example, should be above 80. And all these information will be available for you in ISV Studio in the under the connector telemetry. And of course, we ask for a support 24/7. I think we changed that lately. We are asking for minimum 40 hours per week of support for the connector, and also recommended criteria. For example, active users above 500 in the last 3 weeks. Usage should be above 50 monthly active connections. But also, this is just a recommended criteria, not required. And there's an exception, like if you do not meet those two, but your connector has been in like published and certified for more than 6 months, and you meet all the required criteria, you still can move to GA. So that's all, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Amjed. That was a really fantastic explanation of the certification process. And I want to affirm that when you guys are going and submitting your connectors, it is Amjed behind that GitHub that's going to be giving you that feedback, that's going to be helping you along that certification process. So you got to meet the face behind GitHub today. Thank you so much. And Amjed, if you had the chance, would you mind dropping the links to the documentation for the certification process, as well as our connector partner management email in case people have questions in the chat?
Yes, I will. And also, I want to say, if anybody has like questions, I might take them in the chat as well. Yeah.
Yes, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. Awesome. Rebecca, what's up?
Yeah, I thought I'll just raise my hand. I have a couple of questions, two actually. So, what is in your experience the part of the process where most publishers struggle? So, because it was a very good overview, but is there like a specific part of the process that you need to help publishers to get to the hurdle to actually get certified?
Oh, well, like I want to say, most partners like fail in preparing the Swagger file, which is the very important file. Some of them would like have empty properties which we do not allow. Um, um, Another issue sometimes is like an incorrect icon, and this is only for verified publishers. But I want to say that in our feedback in GitHub, we try to give the feedback exactly like at the line that needs to be changed, and be very descriptive, like, hey, please change this to that. So we'll be like explaining everything for partners, letting them understanding why this change is needed and what needs to be done.
Great. And one other question for the going to GA with your connector, the support for the connector, is that the same requirement for independent publisher connectors and let's call it first party connector or third party connectors where you own the API?
Yes. Both partners need to support their connectors. Yes.
Thanks.
But it's not 24/7. It's 40 hours a week. That's the typo. Yeah, just
Yeah,
don't be
actually, that's
daunted.
why that's why we changed it to 40 hours to like also include our independent publishers and make them also available to provide some support for their connectors as well.
Yeah, because I know that most independent publishers will not be
Yeah.
24/7 available. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.